What's up, guys? Jesse with JTS Woodworking. I want to show you something I've been working on for my sister-in-law, actually. It's a side table that she had, and she just wanted it redone. It wasn't very attractive. It was, I think it's made out of pine, and it was stained, and it had just all kinds of issues with it. I took it all apart, and the first thing I did was I sanded down and I sanded off all the stain on the top. I took the top off, sanded it all down, and then I thought, what am I gonna do with it? She mentioned she wanted something with epoxy, and I've just been experimenting with epoxy in the last couple months, or maybe more than that, but either way, I wanted to do some kind of river table, and so I did the river in the middle, kind of at a diagonal. I'll show you, but I also wanted to do something with clear resin and river rock. So I ended up buying some river rock and basically cut out shapes that kind of look like little ponds or little lakes. And I did that with a Cricut machine, cut out templates, traced the templates, routed them out, and started embedding the rocks. I started embedding the rocks in there and covered it with this clear epoxy. Now, I'll show you what I got. I am not very pleased with how the clear epoxy, it's fuzzy. I don't know if it's my epoxy, which is a cheaper epoxy, since I don't do epoxy pours very much, and I didn't want to spend a bunch of money on expensive epoxy, or if it's the way I mixed it or didn't get all the air bubbles out. I'm not sure. So maybe you guys can help me know what I did wrong. But at this point, it's kind of too late. I think it'll be fine. Once I finish it, it'll get a little bit glossier, and maybe it'll just look like dirty water. So anyways, I'm sorry that I'm kind of halfway through this project already. But when I started this channel, I had a lot of projects going on, and I just kind of want to show you what I'm doing now. So let's get over there and see what we're working with. All right, guys, so here we are. These are the pieces to the table, not the top. So that's the base, here's the middle, and there's where the top bolts onto. So that's part of the top. Those have not been sanded yet. I wanted to work on the top first, and here's what I've done with the top. All right, so here's the top. So obviously I sanded all the stain off, and the first thing I did was I laid this river, okay? I drew my lines, I routed probably a good ½ inch in, and I laid blue epoxy in there, okay? Kind of create this river effect. The next thing I wanted to do is add something else. And so these are the shapes of the templates I cut out. I laid them where I wanted them. You can see the rocks in there. Obviously this is not as clear as I was hoping for, but it'll get a little bit clearer once I put some finish on it. And also, as you can see, I used the Cricut to cut out a template of Minnesota, because that's where we're from, and I used these smaller rocks in there just to give it a little extra. So there's where we're at with it. Right now I got everything sanded down. I routed the edges with a round over bit, and the next step is to add finish to the top. All right, so the next step is to add finish. And the finish I love to use is a wipe-on polyurethane. You can buy it as a wipe-on poly, or you can make your own. And it's more cost effective to make your own, because I like to use regular poly for some projects and wipe-on poly for others. So what I do is I take regular polyurethane and I add some paint thinner to it. Just a little bit, just enough to thin it out so I can wipe it on, and that way I can create thin coats, and it's a lot easier to control. So I'll show you what I do to mix it up, and then we'll see what it looks like after I put on the first coat. All right, so here's what we got. I got my polyurethane, I got my paint thinner, and I have a Dixie cup here, and I'm using a scale. It doesn't have to be super accurate, and you might want to adjust the ratio. I like to use about 80% poly to 20% paint thinner. So the first thing we're gonna do, turn our scale on. Okay, it's zeroed out. I'm just using grams, doesn't really matter. I want to stir your poly. I got a stick here. Stir, never shake your poly, because there will be air bubbles. Not as important with a wipe-on poly. It's definitely important when you're applying it to like a tabletop or something like that, just using regular poly, because you will get air bubbles. Okay, I'm gonna put just a little bit in here because I don't need a lot, okay? Probably about 50 grams. All right, that's perfect. Okay, so we got 50 grams, and in order to figure out what our 20% is, we need to look at our ratio. So 80% compared to 20%. 80 is 4 times as much as 20. So we have our 50 grams, we need to divide that by 4 in order to get our 80-20 ratio, 80% to 20% of paint thinner. Now that turns out to be about 12.5 grams. Again, it doesn't have to be super accurate. Get it close. This is the ratio that I like to use. So we got 50 grams already on there. I'm going to add it to it's about 60, 62, 63, somewhere close. All right, 62 grams. I'm going to mix this up with the stick, and it's nice and liquidy, but still mostly polyurethane. And then we're gonna just take a rag or a towel. I got shop rags that I'm gonna use, and we're gonna apply thin coats. All right, so we have our piece here. We have our wipe-on poly mixture. I'm gonna stir that up a little bit. See how it's liquidy? Okay. And I'm not even gonna need this much, but basically, we're gonna take our rag or shop towel or whatever we use. We're gonna dip it in. Okay, we're gonna start to wipe it on. Then I'm just going to finish it by going left and right with the grain for this first coat. And then when that dries, we're just going to take some like 320 grit sandpaper and just lightly sand it and then apply our next coat. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there for now with this project. I will make another video and go through the rest of the project with you and show you what it looks like when it's done. But for now, I want to show you a couple things I've been working on with epoxy resin. I got a couple projects coming forth, and I have one that's done that I'm very proud of. And yeah, so let's get to that. Wait. When did I change my shirt? All right, guys, so here's a couple projects I've been working on. We'll go over here. So obviously this is a guitar body. What I wanted to do was I wanted to make a guitar body or a guitar, but I didn't have any templates or nothing like that. So I took an old cheap guitar that I had, took the body off, took the neck off, made a template, took this piece of cherry, it was a cherry round, and I filled in these cracks, which were natural cracks, with epoxy, covered it with epoxy, I'm loving the way it's looking so far. The next step would be to obviously finish the body how I want it, sand it down, buff it out, and then install the neck and the electronics, which is probably the most intimidating part. But I'm loving the way it's looking so far. And this next one is also a cherry round that it is filled with epoxy here in the cracks. This is like a black, dark epoxy. And then I got a coat of epoxy on the surface here to fill in all the cracks and to give it a nice finish. But it's sanded, so it looks duller than this. This isn't sanded yet. And when I sand this, I'll buff it out so it'll look shiny again. But just to give you a look of what it will probably look like when it's done, a trick that I use is spray a little water on it, and it'll kind of bring out the color in it. So there you can see a little bit of the color that's going to come out of it once it's finished. And basically I'm just going to attach legs to it for a side table. And the next thing I'll show you is I actually did make a side table using the same process, except I had a birch round and I added custom legs to it, and it turned out really nice, so I'll show you that next. Alright everybody, so here is the side table that I finished. This is the one with a birch round top. And as you can see, the crack that was in there I filled with this blue epoxy resin. I coated it with a thin layer of epoxy, finished it with some polyurethane, sanded it, buffed it down nice and shiny. I got this round over on it. It turned out really nice, and then I made these custom legs. It turned out really good. I'm really happy with it. And so yeah, it is a side table. I am not sure if I'm going to sell it or keep it, but either way, I'm very happy with how it turned out. So that was my first epoxy resin project that I finished. And yeah, I'm just going to be working on some more. Alright guys, so that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. We will be making a second video finishing the side table, and we'll show you what that looks like. We're going to have to sand all the other parts, put all the parts together, and then finish it, and hopefully it turns out good. So I can't wait for that, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks guys, bye.